Grateful to you at the beginning of this new year to give you thanks for the blessings you've bestowed upon this great city, for the staff and the employees that work here, for our mayor and council. Lord, for our citizens, we pray, Lord Jesus, that you would watch over us, take care of us, lead us and guide us and direct us in this time tonight. Lord, we pray that you would help us have clarity of mind and act in unity for the betterment of this city that you've so graciously blessed us with. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started on item 2, we've got a special presentation tonight. I'd like to greet everybody first of all. How are you doing tonight? We're going to invite John Robinson, Pastor John Robinson, Gwen Redwine, and George Rhines to the front. Pastor Robinson, I think you agreed to 18 minutes?
Yes.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year's. I'm going to bring this presentation to you tonight. I'm here to bring you this presentation on the ethics of ongoing for our city, Valdosta, the city without limits, a city that's slowly that's being transformed from the old ways to the modern day era. I'm going to start out talking about the $250 million that I've been coming up here aggravating you about for the past few months. The idea of this request has come before this council on more than one occasion, asking the city for aid to restore for revitalization of the South Side and the low-income communities. It was stated by the mayor that he would ask for the funds if he was asked to make that request. We're not only asking the mayor, but the entire city council to be concerned about these communities. A great amount of funds can come from G.B.R, the Georgia Department of Transportation. They set aside funding by the Biden administration for infrastructure. Like when they built the new bridge on Hill Avenue, the Sonny Vickers overpass on Hill Avenue, the people got compensated. They got paid millions of dollars for displacement. Unlike the James Beck overpass on Patterson Street, where the people were not compensated to that degree. Instead, the community was left to stand alone without any help from some 70 businesses that supported it. These businesses died out because of the obstruction of traffic flow. The main artery was cut off, and life in these communities past deteriorated over the past 40 years, thus leaving a deplorable living condition and dilapidated housing. We propose a plan and a program that needs to be a fruition for our resolution. You know, we made a stance that we would file litigation at some point, and we don't want to go into litigation. We don't want to cost the city taxpayers any more money, but we got to do something. What we are proposing, number one, is an incubator that has a one-stop shop offering different housing services, such as bookkeeping, answering services, whatsoever, and a revolving loan fund to be with it. Number two, a trade center, perhaps the old Dasher School can house the trade center that teaches a variety of different trades, such as carpentry, welding, auto mechanics, painting skills, pipe fitting, masonry skills, accounting, and other skills. Then, number three, we want a $50 million loan fund with an affordable repayment plan for loans that will not exceed $250,000 for startup businesses and businesses that have already been generated and running. Now, we don't want to get too far involved with many issues tonight, but what we are looking at is a 0.05% sales tax increase. We propose that a 0.5% increase be added to the ballot for 2 to 1% sales tax that have already existed here in the city. This increase will be used to support the program and the service of this community. Last year, 2022, the county and the city, I believe, received somewhat approximately $127 million for the 1% sales tax. I believe that the city obtained at least $67 million of that. These funds are being used to upgrade roads, streets throughout the county and city. But none of these funds were allocated to upgrade these low-income communities. For example, $21 million are being used to widen Old Clydesville Road, I believe, and road worth of millions of dollars to be spent on St. Augustine and elsewhere around the city. Out of all of these funds and all of this money, not even 21 cents was spent to benefit the lives of the oppressed that's economically left out in these oppressed areas. That's why we have to look back from which we came, have to revisit the past just for a few minutes. I don't want to go into something that's devastating to the point that we get all confused about the issue. But I have to talk about what really took place in order for us to be able to move forward and some ugly issues that we have to discuss. Going back to the time of the old 1860 charter that remained on these walls until 2004, until it was reluctantly removed. It hung here in these walls, in this building, for all those years, over 100 years. From paragraph 100, section 11 of the old 1860 charter, it reads as follows: that the mayor and council, they shall pass all proper and necessary laws and ordinances to control slaves and free persons of color in said town. Suppress and abate nuisances arising from hogs, dogs, horses, and other stocks at large in said town, and for other causes. These men that's displayed upon this poster that George Ryan has, I have here a poster that these men was the mayors that's on this poster. Passed the laws and maintained the ethics of the said town over 100 years. These are just portions of those that was involved. It was the formation of this present-day local government established by passing all proper and necessary laws and obtained and executed by suppression. Because of that, Valdosta have never had not one black mayor elected, not a city manager to this present day. We must come to grips with what we are facing. It's time now for change. And I believe that we can move forward. We don't have to go into litigation. I believe that if you make a request for the funding and we get the funding in place, things can really change and turn around. At this point, I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Redwine to discuss the issues that she has. But I urge you to please consider the factors of the things that we're asking for and that we want to get done without going into litigation.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Hello, Ms. Redwine.
Hello. How much time do I have, please? All right. Thank you very much. Happy New Year to everybody. Thank you, Reverend Robinson. I'd like to first acknowledge Ms. Rachel Bradley, who represents the Southside Rec Center. She has included a multi-million-dollar bid for a much-needed overhaul that will be included in our proposal to you tonight. Also, Ms. Tina Matchett, who is the owner of a business in the ignored Black downtown business sector and whose voice for help with her family historic home in the Southside Historic District has fallen on deaf ears. The 1980 adoption of the Valdosta Historic Preservation Ordinance is one of the most bizarre reoccurrences of segregation ever witnessed in modern-day America. It created the Valdosta Heritage Foundation as its first historic preservation tool. One of the first things that the foundation did was to create the local historic district. And Tina Matchett is going to kind of show photos. But this is the original historic district, which is an empty district. There are no districts in it yet. It's an empty district. And then the second thing the foundation did was to create the Valdosta Commercial District, which was the first district to be housed within the district. Yes. The first district was kind of big, but on the smaller, on this map, I got a big map because people were complaining and say they couldn't see anything. Now it's too big to handle. But this is the first district that was included. It is the Valdosta Commercial District. At the time, the district should have included the black portion of downtown. That would have been a legal district. But instead, they segregated the district and just made it one district stopping at the tracks, so no money went over there. It's a tiny little district. You know how the commercial district looks downtown. All right, and then after that, the other districts were created, but they weren't created in such rapid succession after those. There are 6 historic districts in Valdosta, but only 5 are in the local historic district. The only excluded district is the Southside Historic District. This district also was the last to be placed on the register, and it was placed in 2007, almost 25 years after the first district, which was placed in 1981. The ordinance also created the Historic Preservation Commission, whose purpose is to control the aesthetics of the LHD. But also, their powers are limited because they are representing only those properties located in the sub-areas of the district map. And I'll show you the sub-areas of the district map. There are 3 sub-areas, and the ordinance, the district map is a little tiny with color. Here it is right here, you already gave it to me. This is your district sub-area map, and there are 3 sub-areas, and the ordinance says that the members only represent the sub-areas. There are only 3, and the ordinance says that on the first page of the website. However, the entire Southside Historic District is omitted. So who's representing them? They're not part of the sub-area. So that's another problem I have with the segregated boundaries of these maps. Both the Foundation and the Historic Preservation Commission share common seed. They were both created at the same time by some of the same people. They share and cross over boards. Some of the board members of the Foundation are on the board of the HPC, and they just cross over like that. The loss of financial incentives for blacks in Valdosta cannot even be measured, I don't think. I will read from the original guidelines. This is an excerpt from Main Street that was in the original design and review guide that was published around 1980, if I can see it. I'm only going to just read a sentence, but the purpose of Main Street, I'll just read in the words. The Main Street program encourages deteriorated downtown to utilize their own resources in strengthening the commercial core. Any successful plan must be economically viable. This principle is the backbone of the Main Street program. If those dollars had crossed the track, we wouldn't see the gaping holes that we see now in the landscape of what they now call the Southside Historic District. I don't think it's representative of my heritage. Once that district was the home of over 200 vibrant businesses, and the downtown black district was home to over 100 as early as 1977, yet in 1980, 3 years later, it was encroached upon by the Beck Overpass. And then when the passage of the historic ordinance was passed, it completely killed the community because no funds flowed into the community after that of any substance. The saddest casualty of what's happened with these segregated ordinances is St. Paul AME Church. It's the oldest church in town, and it's the only church that's not in the historic district. It's the only church that's not on the National Register. In fact, there aren't any black churches on the register. They've not been designated by the HPC, nor have they been designated by the Heritage Foundation. There aren't any neighborhoods on the register like East End East Fairview and East End and Brookwood North. There are no schools really protected. Dasher High is on the register, but it's not in a local historic district, so it can be demolished at any time. There are no homes associated with iconic black people, preserved as there are all along North Patterson Avenue. So, I'm going to go on to say that meanwhile, the 14 homes on North Patterson Street have enjoyed protection since 1982. The 21 homes in Fairview have enjoyed it since 1984. The 3 subdivisions and 1 site in Brookwood North have enjoyed it since 1995. The East End since 2005. No person in the United States shall, on the grounds of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation in, be denied benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. This is the gist of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. How can an injustice of this magnitude go on so far for so long? The system of entitlement is probably entrenched now. It's been going on for 40 plus years. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said months before he was assassinated, justice denied, justice too long delayed is justice denied. So please consider repealing the Valdosta Historic Preservation Ordinance. Thank you.
Very well, thank you. Georgia, you gonna include yourself in this one?
I think it's good. I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Please.
I just was curious if, Ms. Redwine, have you met with our HPC planner and city planner?
I
gone over
did.
the nuts and bolts of,
I and my group met with them for several months after James Horton left, because we've been working with him. And we went to one of the meetings in May of 2020, and we were made to feel so unwelcome. I decided I wouldn't return until we had a voice. We were asked, why are you even here? We were asked that by one of the members of the HBC board. Why are you even here? That was humiliating, it was embarrassing, and it was, I didn't react badly, but it really hurt me. And so I decided the group would never go back again until someone apologized or made us feel that we had a voice. So to answer your question, yes.
okay. I was just curious because there are perceptions out there that being in the historic district automatically makes you eligible for funds, public funds. And that's not the case. I mean, I can't think of maybe 2 or 3.
It's in the ordinance. It's in the ordinance. It's very clear what benefits are available through the different layers of historic layering that the zoning department does. It's very clear what the benefits are.
But those aren't local funds. Those are state and federal funds.
Well, I'm not sure where the funds come from. I just know the people in the district are getting it and the people are outside are not.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad you met with them, though. And sorry that going to the meeting wasn't beneficial.
It was only up until after James left. Other than that, it was okay.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Council, any other questions, statements?
I would like to sit down with you all and listen to what you all have to say and get a copy of what you brought to us this evening. You and Pastor Robinson, please.
Okay. Certainly. I'll make sure you have a copy of everything that I presented. I'll send you a packet.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Council. Thank you both.
Welcome.
Georgia Vote Suppression Hitman, Brian P. Kemp. Video trailer by Greg Palast shows what Black Americans have been experiencing here in Georgia and across The Nation, since December 21st, 2010. The Ghetto Free Press started documenting bogus voter fraud charges against Black Georgians when SOS Brian P. Kemp arrested 12 citizens in Quitman Brooks County, Georgia, and they became known as the Quitman 10+2. However, after 4 years these 12 outstanding citizens were cleared of all charges. In addition, we have 20 other cities wherein Georgia vote suppression system were in full operation as highlighted in Mr. Greg Palast film Vigilante. Lastly, this documentary film should be seen by all Americans. G.B.R.
I again was doing what I do, talking to people everywhere I see them at. Hey, have you voted?
Ms. Pearson?
Yeah. Not everybody likes that I'm doing it.
Olivia Pearson's mother led the county's NAACP.
My mother sued the city of Douglas to get more representation on the city council.
After years of registration drives, Olivia became the first Black woman to win election to the council.
When I received the letter in 2016 from the Secretary of State signed by Brian Kemp,
Kemp used his power as head of the state election board to have Olivia charged with the felony crime of interfering with voters.
I could have served up to 5 years in prison. So it was very, very, very frightening. It was very depressing. I had to go and receive counseling to help me to cope with it. It was horrendous.
A jury quickly found her not guilty because, as it turned out, disabled voters had filled out the official forms requesting her help.
They had the handcuffs around my back, my hands to the back. I couldn't get into the car with them like that. I was in excruciating pain.
The New York Times wrote that Olivia's case made Brian Kemp a pioneer of present-day voter suppression.
The young lady that I was with at the time, she told me, she said, "Miss Olivia, I don't even want to vote. After all of this, I don't want to vote anymore. I don't want to do it." And I had to beg her and explain to her that that's what they're doing it for, is to cause people to be afraid to exercise the right to vote.
From his very first year as Georgia's voting chief, Brian Kemp literally ordered armed seizures. He sent the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, Georgia's own version of the FBI, to Quitman, Georgia, to arrest 10 newly elected members of the school board. The first Black members on the board, arresting teachers, including 2 PhDs. Kemp accused them of stuffing tampered ballots into mailboxes. That same old accusation as in 2000 Mules. Kemp had them paraded in handcuffs and orange suits like they were terrorists at Guantanamo. Local journalist George Boston Rhines has closely tracked the case.
I'm George Boston Rhines, and I'm in Quitman, Georgia. And I am immediately, just got down here. These are the Quitman 10. This is what I do.
After 4 years of prison over their heads, the Quitman 10 were acquitted of every charge.
So much stress was on those people. Lula Smart even considered taking her own life.
With all the indictment that I had, in my mind, I thought, well, if I just commit suicide, this will be over.
Another suffered from lupus.
Latasha Head, she died. And I interviewed her father, and he said that he believed that his daughter's death was a result of the stress and pressure brought about by Secretary of State Brian P. Kemp.
All right, so on Thursday, council will be prepared. Mark Barber will read the official election results. And we'll present that for the record. And we'll have a couple of oaths of office. We'll have one for our new District 3 councilman. We'll also have an election of Mayor Pro Tem and that oath of office on that night. Also before you are the minutes from the previous meeting. You'll make sure that they're accurate and there's no omissions on that one or additions. Item 6 will be the public hearing, consideration of an ordinance to amend Chapter 222 off-street parking standards of the City of Valdosta Land Development and Regulations. Matt Martin, our fantastic planning director, will present. Hi, Matt.
Hello, thank you, Mayor. In your packet is the same packet that you had in your agenda packet back at the first reading, which was on December the 8th. As was discussed then with commentary with myself and the city attorney, it was suggested that we relocate one of the sentences. So this evening I gave you a handout that is a revised version of the draft ordinance that would be the final version of the text. It is identical to the one that you saw a month ago, with the exception of one sentence, which has simply been moved from one area to another. So in your packet you have...
I just want to ask you a question. Which that sentence? I was looking for that.
I'm about to point it out as soon as I can find my own copy. Council, you have two different versions of the amendments. One is in the red and yellow. This is our customary underlined strikeout format. This shows where all the changes are. So that should be early in the packet. And then after that, you have what I call the cleaned up version, which is listed as a draft ordinance. And that's what all of this language would look like after these changes take effect. And that was presented both ways. Some folks like to read the before and after together. Some folks want to see what the after is going to look like. So the change was, if you look in this section here, at the very top of the page, right above the yellow print, is the first sentence of that paragraph. That's the sentence that got relocated. And they got moved down to the bottom and became letter F as its own little subsection. As the city attorney had pointed out back in December, that is sort of like a preamble that has nothing to do with the parts below, and it's really the sentences below that tie together sections A through D as a group. And so it was a good idea, I thought, as he did, to point out that put A and D as its group first, and then the rest of it later. So all we did was move that first sentence down to the bottom. And so that's reflected in the handout, which is the cleaned up version of this, with the sentence being relocated, and shows you what all the language will look like after the changes are made.
I am going to ask the question. I'm just trying to see it now.
All right, the sentence reads, in any residential zoning district, it shall be unlawful for any person to park or stand for any period. That part, that applies to all residential zoning districts, regardless of the use of land. A through D is only for properties in residential zoning that are single family or duplex. It does not pertain to other uses and other properties. And that's why we shifted the order around.
Now, I get a suggestion about city attorney.
So if you look on page 3 of the handout, it's letter F. That's where the sentence went. Because it's not meant to go with sections A through D, it's meant to be its own because it covers more than just single family or duplexes. So all we did was relocate the sentence. We made no changes to the wording, just the order that it's shown on the page. But that's the only change since December.
So what's being proposed for amendment is LDR Chapter 222, Section 222-11 and 222-12. These are the residential parking standards on private property. This has nothing to do with parking on streets and public property. That is addressed elsewhere in the general code of ordinances.
Matt, have you had any feedback coming in from the public?
We've had none. Planning Commission reviewed this back at the November meeting, like they do other LDR text amendments, and they're recommending approval of it. Most of the changes are self-explanatory. It's cleaning up some of the language, a few things clarifying, the use of 50% of the yard, the maximum number of vehicles, making a little tighter distinction between the residential parking overlay district and the rest of the residential areas of the city. One of the important things, I think, is we're now using or proposing to use the term covered parking versus uncovered. That was never addressed before, which was made a gray area, which makes it harder to administer. So that's one of the important clarifications that we're putting in here. Okay. But yeah, no feedback that we have received.
I haven't had anything either, but I'm just curious if any of the members of council.
I have.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say, I understand what the purpose of this is, but we know in our community, and it's all over the United States, that people are struggling. You have children moving back home, you have family members moving back home, and I think this is gonna impact them. I think maybe we should hold off on this to a little bit later to see if the time is gonna pick up a little bit, because telling people, 5 vehicles, I know that's a lot, but when you have children coming back home from college and family members moving in, 5 vehicles, that's not a lot. People working, going to school, and to tell them they can't park, it's gonna be hard on some people.
I have a comment also I would ask, because I have had questions about it when talking to people about what they say we're going to park. Now, I do agree that we should not have them parking on the side of the road, along the road and everything. But they were talking about, the thing is, it's my yard, how can I do what I got to do? If I have to make these provisions, the city is telling me to make provisions, how y'all going to help me do this? To fix my yard up or fix up where I can park my car. That's one thing. We bought the cars and we got them, it was okay. Now that we have them and we're using them, or we park them there, we're making a law, and you're going to charge me for it. This just happened, like I said, it is a lot, but some questions are coming up about it. And I told them, they can come up and speak, they can come up and say something, whatever they have to say about it. Some say they do it. So that's all I know to tell them, but they are understanding it is a big strain. It's going to be hard for them to do, and they just talking about whatever. Some say they have to go to jail, deal with the jail. But we just say those are some of the comments I'm getting back. And I also looked at the statement when it said this ordinance shall become effective immediately upon passage. And I did question about notifying people, because a lot of people still are not aware. And if we pass this, say the very next day we go out and give them a citation, they're not going to even know about it. I noticed that was not changed, so I guess that's going to be continued, even though they say, well, we won't do it. If we're not going to do it, then make it effective. Put it in there like we change the statement. If it's best to change it with clarity, let's change this also that it doesn't, give them some kind of notice. I think we need to do that as well.
And that is something we talked about briefly back in December, but as with any ordinance, the effective date is purely at council's discretion. The default is, unless you set a date of effectiveness, it becomes effective immediately. So that's why it's worded that way now. It doesn't have to stay that way. For example, when the whole LDR was adopted back in 2008, that public hearing was in early December, but the effective date was made January 1. And it can be any date that council chooses. And I don't know if there's limitations on how far out, but probably not. But that's purely at council's discretion.
Well, I was asking, at least give them 90 days is what we kind of thought about before. I know the council wasn't keen on it then, but at least give them a 90-day notice or something that we can put it out in, because people are still not aware.
I think everybody actually was in agreement that we would give them a pretty large grace period. So I think that's misstated. I think the council is all in agreement for a very large grace period.
Well, very large.
Grace period.
Well, why won't we stay?
So we will, but we were all in agreement in that first discussion that there was going to be a grace period.
Right, but really it's a matter of picking a date.
Correct. Yeah, so it doesn't change the wording of the ordinance, it changes when we say it goes into effect. At our discretion.
But that's not, we gonna set a time, right?
But y'all gotta keep in mind too, the reason why this has been brought back up to readdress is because we've had some folks that come to complain to us about parking in their neighborhood.
14, 15 cars.
You know, and overdoing it, and we asked, you know, Matt to go back and take a look at this and address this and to figure out how we can, you know, beef it up, I guess. And so that's why we're back here again, it's because of that. We're trying to satisfy, you know, our constituents who are complaining. Miss, who's it, Gracie?
Just basically.
You know, like her coming up and others such as that. So, I'm not saying that, you know, we can't hold it off for 60 days, 90 days before somebody actually gets a ticket, that kind of thing. What I'm saying is that the whole purpose of why this has been brought up is to address those situations, those issues that have been brought to us for the last year now. So, but I agree, Eric. I mean, it is kind of hard when you got people coming back home. I mean, and they got, you know, 6 drivers in the house because everybody's over the age of 16. You know, I mean, I do. I mean, I know where you're coming from. But at the end of the day, you know, this is also to kind of, you know, this is why we also allow them to be able to park on the rear or to park on the side or to be able to park 5 in the front. So it does give leeway for them to be able to say, hey, you know, I got 6 vehicles, but we're going to have to park 2 of them over here. You know, I'm not saying we can't change that number. I'm just saying that there is leeway to modify the parking arrangement, you know, even if they have to pull around back or whatever, if they have that capability.
Again, if adopted, that timeline is yours. Also, the Public Information Office would do a great job of trying to get some of that out there, some of the rules changes out there to educate the public as well.
I mean, I know a family right now, they got 6 vehicles. It's because they got 2 twins, an 18-year-old and a 20-year-old, and then the mom and dad. So they got 6 cars. But it's like I told them, you just want to have to park 2 of them to the side, you know, or park 1 of them on the side, that kind of thing. But I mean, but also I know, you know, what Ms. Tilley's saying here, Councilwoman Tilley's saying as far as addressing the parking instance, but we're talking about they can, you know, they don't have to go out and pour a concrete pad or put down rock or go out and spend tons of money to validate what's a parking spot.
Right. The only place where those extra rules come into play is in the overlay.
That's the overlay district.
The overlay district, they have to do that,
Right.
which is my district.
Like they would have to do the pine straw, concrete, or
Here, it's just a matter of
not parking on the front yard.
But Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, you're softening in one and then doing it uniform for the whole city now, correct?
There's still a distinction between the residential parking overlay district and the rest of the city. Each still has its own separate rules. We've clarified both. That's why the amendments to the 2 different sections. So there's no
district, we have to have overlay district for District 6. You have to have well, not just pavement. You just have to have a, you know, like road ties or something, timber ties, something, or bark or pine straw, something identified. This is a parking spot
in the front yard.
Yeah.
I just have one question with the Hispanics in my area. They park in their front yard, and it's a host of them, and they really would not understand what we're saying now. And a lot of them, the size of their homes, you cannot drive and to park in the rear. So they have to park in the front and rear that. So that's why I'm asking if it can be, I'm willing to help them understand, because they can't park side the street because it's a narrow street. Let's say Brookwood, they can't park down Brookwood. And the houses are so close, they cannot park beside someone else's home because because the person will say you're in my yard. So that's a problem. I'm not against it, but we don't have to come to some kind of make. I understand that District 6 has to do all that, but I'm just trying to worry about District 1 because in my area it's a lot of expense. And if they work, and they do honest living, and they materials in the back of their home, and they work with roofing and et cetera, so they can park in the front, and it's more than 5 cars. So how do we protect those people and African American people that have to do the same thing? Because we don't have the huge backyard, we don't have the huge yards on the side, and we don't have the huge yards in the front. We have to pick up a bucket and park, that's all we got. Did you look into that area? Did you all look into that area?
We did. Back, you may recall the previous amendments that we proposed where we were looking at just one neighborhood.
Yeah.
And we noticed a lot of existing conditions with existing driveways that were not paved.
Was against it during that time.
Right.
The small areas that people had to park their cars. And I'm not against what Ms. Bacon is saying, but we can't pacify one person and destroy a whole village for one person. But I'm not going against, I'm just giving what I feel.
Any other questions for Matt? Matt, thank you. Item B, consideration of a request to close an unopened alley located on West Street between JL Lomax and River Street. Ben O'Dowd, our city engineer, to present that.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This request was brought to us by Randall Godfrey. It was precipitated by a request to, I believe, combine 2 separate parcels during the legal research, during the parcel combination process, and what's referred to as a paper alley was discovered. This is a common reference to an alley that exists on some kind of subdivision plat that was recorded many years ago, but has never been utilized, was never formally opened, i.e. the alley was never cleared of trees, it was never utilized for access. But Mr. Randall Godfrey has requested to close this portion of the alley. We've distributed the request for closure to all of the relevant city departments and utilities departments. There are no issues with this alley closure. It's only a portion of the alley. I can answer any questions that you might have about this one.
Council?
I don't have it. I was a part of that from the beginning. And everybody in that area is all excited about that envision coming to.
Good. Good.
Other questions, Ben?
Thank you.
On to item 7A, consideration of a request for payment to the U.S. Geological Survey for a monitoring station with the Withlacoochee River is agreed to in the Georgia Environmental Protection Division consent order. Bradley Hare, how you doing?
Good, thank you, Mayor, Council. This is agenda item is a consideration of a request for contract approval for the U.S. Geological Survey for a monitoring station on the Withlacoochee River, as agreed to in the Georgia EPD and consent order, number EPD WP 8904. As you remember, in December of 2019, we had a spill at the Reamer lift station that precipitated this consent order. On August 11, 2020, the city signed and agreed to comply to all the conditions of that consent order. Per section 13, the above mentioned consent order, we had within 180 days of its execution to establish a permanent water quality monitoring station on the Withlacoochee River at US Highway 84, downstream of the Withlacoochee plant. This station was established and has been operational in the required time frame. In accordance with the consent order, began operation in May 1, 2020, and will continue operation at a cost to the city until April 1, 2025. The city's cost for the operation of this monitoring station is in the sum of $170,150 to USGS. We recommend authorization to pay this. It's actually, we have invoices that will be submitted, but and we have several a few that are outstanding. In your packet, you'll see some additional supporting information, letter that you signed, and the additional backup information. If you have any questions, be glad to answer those.
Council, any questions?
I do, but I guess I guess Tom 101 topic to discuss. It looks like we were paying, has been paying it already. Have we not been paying it?
We have not paid the invoices, and I think the reason for that is they were sent by email to previous director. I believe that's the case. They were sent to Daryl, and we did not. We didn't get a copy of those. So for whatever reason. Now we do have a similar contract with the Stormwater Division makes payments, similar payments for some other services with USGS. Maybe what you're thinking of. We have made payments to USGS for the stormwater, whatever contract we have with stormwater.
So you've had all these invoices since 2020?
Well, we've had 6 total. They didn't start coming then, but the station was built, and then after it was built and started monitoring, then they started receiving invoices. So we just weren't aware of it.
Language in the request is very friendly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one question, you said you were sent to this news, would that be sent to his office, the seat that you're sitting in now?
Well, I believe it was sent to his email. And I don't get copies of those. I mean, that's not forwarded for some reason. I'm not sure why that is, but that's the only reason that I see that, because we haven't received a paper copy of those invoices. That's something I can assume.
One last point of clarification, that's work done to date. There's still over the last 3 years of 2 years the consent order is going to be further.
Correct, yeah. The station's built and it has been monitoring for the last couple of years. And it will monitor until 2025.
Any other questions for Brad?
I'll talk to you one on one.
Thank you. Item B, consideration of a request for replacements of packing material that covers 1, 2, and 3. I did send you away, didn't I, Brad? For the guest road.
Yes, this item is a consideration request for replacement of the packing material in scrubbers 1, 2, and 3 of the Guest Road Water Treatment Plant. The current packing was installed in 2007. We've sent some photos that you can see up on the screen there. Those are the strippers and scrubbers as part of the degasification process. And due to normal wear and tear, the age of the packing material, normal lifespan is 15 years. We're about 16 years on the packing material that we're planning to replace here. The packing material replacement is part of normal routine maintenance for proper treatment processes and plant operation. The agenda item is submitted to authorize payment to Indusco Environmental Services in the amount of $87,825 to purchase and install a full complement of the scrubber packing. This also includes the removal and disposal of existing packing, cleaning of scrubber vessels, and general system performance inspection. This is the manufacturer of the strippers and scrubbers, and they also make the packing material. We recommend authorization to approve the sole source purchase packing in the amount of $87,825 to Indusco Environmental Services.
Council, any questions?
Just have one, sir. When I think I get elected, I think Councilman James Wright, we did a ribbon cutting for that location. You said 16 years that these items. So,
The Guest Road.
What year was that?
The Guest Road Water Plant up on Guest Road. I think it was 2007 is when that packing was installed. And there's some additional photos. I don't know, Teresa, if you scroll down, you can see what the packing material You can see they're basically media that help stir the sulfides and the chlorine to remove that. It's a degassing process, and this is one of the older ones that they become brittle and worn, we have two different kinds of material. But the first original material was these round balls, and then they've replaced them with the other material that you see there.
Any further questions on this item? Right, stay put. We'll move on to item C, consideration of a request for payment of emergency sewer repairs on Patriot Road.
This agenda item is a consideration of a request for payment for emergency sewer repairs on Patriot Road. On the week of July 11th, 2020, the City Utilities Department personnel responded to a report of sewage overflowing from a manhole in Patriot Road near Spring Hill Drive. Following an investigation, the city crews installed a temporary bypass to transfer the sewage flowing into this manhole to the next downstream manhole. It was due to a blockage in that section of the main. Subsequent video inspection of the evaluation revealed a sewer pipe liner failure, which was causing obstruction and buildup and hindering the proper flow in the sewer pipe. After receiving a proposal for the work, City selected G.B.R. to begin making the repairs. Facts and issues. The existing sewer liner required installing and maintaining a bypass operation and securing a liner boring removal company to extract the old liner. A new liner was installed in this section of sewer main after the removal of the old liner. A new sanitary manhole was installed, also immediately south of Patriot Road, to replace an older 3-foot substandard brick manhole that was also leaking. In addition, a drop connection invert repair was required at the existing manhole in Patriot Road that was discovered later to be cracked in a state of collapse, which was causing a problem for the road. JWA completed all the repairs December 9th, 2022, and submitted invoices for the work in the amount of $159,300 and $15,200 for a total of $174,500. We recommend the authorization of payment in the amount of $174,500 to JWA. The other option would be not to authorize. Any questions?
Council questions? Brad? I think so. Bradley, thank you.
Okay.
Consideration of a request for payment to CDM Smith Engineers for phase 1 of the very exciting new project, the water treatment plant.
Yeah, and this is the test well portion of this project. They are, as you know, we're looking at potential sites, and this is, this is part of the ARPA grant funds for the number 2 water plant. On February 22, 2022, the City Utilities Department received a notification from the Governor's Office that we had a preliminary grant award in the amount of $12,075,000, pending approval of a final budget, which we received in December 22nd of this year. Since that time, the Utilities Department has been notified of the preliminary grant award. The Utilities Department began the progress of preliminary planning, activities to begin site acquisition, and plant design processes. City was approved for the grant award of $12,075,000, along with the city's matching funds of $4,025,000, which is 25%. The combined funds budgeted for the new water treatment plant total $16,100,000. CDM Smith Engineering, who was selected by the city's utility department in 2017 to conduct a future water study and then subsequently assisted the city in submitting for the ARPA grant award, was selected as the engineering consultant to design and provide oversight for the water treatment plant number 2. At the utilities request, CDM Smith Engineers have provided a cost proposal for this new water treatment plant number 2, phase 1 test well contract in the amount of $175,302, which also includes sub-consultant fees that the cost of $93,880 for the test well, for a total of $269,182. We recommend authorization for the contract approval in the amount of $269,182 to CDM for this work. I'll take your questions.
Council? You may now sit down. Item E, consideration of a request to purchase of 2 vacant parcels of land at 400 South Patterson Street and 406 South Patterson Street. Mark Barber, our city manager, is presenting.
This is the two parcels of property that we spoke about last meeting. That's under the overpass. We've been working trying to purchase property along there to revitalize that area. We've been successful finally to get two folks to take advantage of that. These 2 parcels, council gave me authorization to go up to $13,500, which is what the family that's selling was requesting. They have agreed to that and are ready to close for the $13,500. And if you remember correctly, one is the large parcel in the corner of South Patterson in Florida, and then there's one that's a smaller portion behind another piece of property that can be well utilized if we can get the other parcel between that one we just got. So slowly making progress on purchasing that land. The family does agree to the $13,500 that council gave me authorization to negotiate to.
Again, that's exciting. Any questions for our city manager? Mark, thank you. Also be ready for citizens to be heard on Thursday, our city manager's report, council comments, and more. I'll now entertain a motion to adjourn. You may ask.
Can we get an update on our LD project? Put it on the city website or something, because people been asking, how far we really got.
I'll make it happen.
Okay.
Cool. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the regular meeting and enter into executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel.
So moved. Second.
Motion is second. All in favor, show of hands. Thank you. Gallery, thank you. John, if you'll hang around, I want to talk about it.
Okay.
From the local historic district, a district that was created by that ordinance 40 years ago. 40 years later, here is how the community looks because of that exclusion and because of the neglect, the non-concern about the residents who live here under this overpass after it was constructed back in 1980. So that's my main issue now, is to repeal the Valdosta Historic Preservation Ordinance and have it replaced by one that is not discriminatory. It is against the law to live in a town that is openly practicing racist policies because of an ordinance that was created. The ordinance is a racist ordinance because it was purposely drawn to exclude the entire black south side of Valdosta, and then one of the other districts that shares community with the black community was drawn out of that district. And this has been on the books now for 40 years. We have a small group of people who manage only a small percentage of the real estate in Valdosta under the guise of historic preservation. So historic preservation is being used to discriminate against a people, and it's a law. It is illegal. It must be repealed. Now I'd like to introduce Reverend John Robinson. He's a wonderful man. He's a determined man. He's smart. He's a book author. He's a visual artist. He works for Black people. He's a civil rights advocate. He's worked all over the country, I think, advocating for civil rights. So I'd like to introduce Reverend John Robinson at this time.
Hello, I'm John Robinson, a native of Valdosta. I was born on Stafford Wright Road in 1954, right here in Lowndes County. I drank from the colored water cooler. I've been to the colored toilets. You know, I'm born without civil rights. I was born without rights. And I left here in 1963 and come back in 1994 to find that economic oppression is something that devastates this city. This community is suffering and struggling with economic oppression ever since the construction of the James Beck Bridge. Over the past 40 years, it has slowly drained the life and livelihood from a once thriving community. It was economically stable from the support of more than 70 sustainable businesses. The deterioration left the community in a deplorable state with dilapidated housing, a rundown community. No retribution nor justice has never been considered since the construction of this bridge. We took a stand threatening the city with litigation on the Title VI, and from there we entered into a promising progressive dialogue about solutions. We are asking the city to request from the federal government $250 million for restoration of the South Side and our low-income community. We need a substantial amount with a planned program, one that would include an incubator with a revolving loan program. We could utilize the old Dasher Historic School for a trade center, teaching various trades such as welding, painting, electricians. This is not a game. People are hurting from the oppression thrust upon them by the economic instability of the construction of this bridge. I put that statement together so that people can get a good idea of the devastating effect that these racist policies have had on this city. Ever since this bridge has been constructed, there have never been any progression made here. This part of the city literally died. They even blocked the street off just down the street behind me, that these buildings in here and these businesses can't even be served. It seemed as if it was some type of conspiracy in the plot of design and the layout of the city. They could have took other options. They could have considered putting a tunnel in this area instead of just blocking this off. When we go over the north side of this bridge, we see pure prosperity. When you stand at the peak of this bridge and look to the south, you see pure poverty. They come into the community and give us monuments, things that don't serve the purpose of re-empowering the people. I do believe that we have to take a stand. We threatened them with litigation under Title VI, and it prompted us to this engagement of a progressive meeting with the mayor and city council. We're hoping that the city council will be like the mayor, would agree that he is willing to ask the federal government for the $250 million for the aid of this city, to help the city. Not that we as an organization is asking for not one dime. All we are asking is that this city request from the federal government $250 million to start the restoration and the revitalization of this community on this side of the city. That's been long neglected. It's way overdue. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Robinson. And now we'd like to hear from George Boston Rhines, our roving grassroots reporter.
I'm George Boston Rhines, and I'm just going to be brief. I do have a system called the Get To Free Press. When I discovered that most of your black news is not being covered in South Georgia, not just Valdosta. And so I picked up my camera and began to do what I do today. To be brief and to the point, you can find this particular video on my website, Boston G.B.R. And I want to thank Ms. Wynn and Mr. Robinson and Channel 10 and all these 8 patriotic citizens that are here today. I'm going to be very brief, but I would like to say a couple of things. Number one, Mr. Robinson presented this to the county commissioners and city at one time or another. Mr. Robinson worked. We have gone back for the last 20 or 25, 30 years working and trying to get economic justice here. We work with Hunter Hopper, dealing with the small emerging businesses and several committees that were set up and designed to include blacks into the economic pie of this city. At the same time, I have traveled to Atlanta and found out that the black contractors statewide get less than 2% of all the contracts that are given out here in this city. And that is a documented fact that you can take to the doctor's office if you get sick from that number. Now, this particular James Beck overpass looks like the one that's called Sonny Vickers overpass. But there's two different histories here. The histories is that the people that lived here in the black community, they didn't get any money. The other one over there, we understand that some of your richest folk in town got some money from it. In fact, we didn't even know that they got that much money until Robinson wanted to talk to Mayor Scott James Matheson, and we found that out. Now, I'm going to close this out because Valdosta is a strange place to live, but I love it here, and if I didn't love it here, then why did I come here? But let me share this with you. In spite of everything that we've heard and will hear, and through the video that you're going to see posted in this video, there was an 1860 city charter displayed on the second floor of Valdosta City Hall. When I saw that charter, I was literally shocked as a retired military veteran. That charter says some disgraceful things about black Americans, and I'm going to quote it in a minute. But first, I would like to say that everything that Ms. Redwine and Mr. Robinson has said is just skimming the surface, because this is indeed a racist city. It's a good city. It has great people, great industries, great jobs, but it's in serious trouble, and the trouble needs to be addressed. Moody Air Force Base, home rests in Loudoun County. Moody Air Force Base airmen and top-ranked commissioned officers rest here in Loudoun County, Georgia. But today, I'm just going to mention to you that 1860 charter so you can see what the problem has always been since this city was established way back a long, long time ago. Now, when I saw it, I addressed it to the mayor and council. They fought me. They said that it was a part of history and that it need to remain. Here's what that charter said. That the mayor and council shall pass all proper and necessary laws and ordinances for the control of slaves and people of color, and to abate all nuisances arising from hogs, dogs, and other livestock living in Valdosta, Georgia. Quite natural, being a veteran of the Vietnam era, it offended me. Although that charter was displayed in City Hall on the second floor, leading into Judge Edwards' courtroom. I was so offended by it, how our elected officials could sit on council with that charter on the wall. Make a long story short, they removed it. But the mentality of that charter, this is what Sister Redwine is saying. The mentality of that charter remains. Now, this is not being ugly. This is being truthful. And I'm going to hand the mic over, but I want the people who listen to this to understand something. Valdosta give home to Moody Air Force Base, Valdosta State University, Georgia Military College, Wiregrass Technical College, Wild Adventures Theme Park, Francis Lake, the golf course, I can't think of it right, Kendaloo Golf Course. So there's so much potential here. Right over here, of course, is Martin Luther King Corridor, an outstanding place to come visit if you live in New York. And if you come to Valdosta, we want to welcome you here. And Valdosta, not all bad. I'm not down in Valdosta because I love Valdosta. Valdosta's got a rich history, a good one and a bad one. Now, right along South Patterson Street, during the week of terror in May of 1918, they drugged Sidney Johnson up and down South Patterson after they killed him in a house over there on Fry Street, I think it was, Old Lake Park Road. And they drug his body from here to Marvin, Georgia. So I want you to know that there is a good history about Valdosta, but there's another history that very few people want to talk about. So I want to say to you all, thank you very much. Thank you all. Give you all yourselves a round of applause.
And thank you, George. Well, the press conference is officially over.
Thank you for that. So can you tell me a little bit about why you guys are out here today in a brief statement?
We're here to bring attention to 40 years of injustice caused by historic preservation planning that skewed away or against from the Black community, as well as zoning policies and policies from City Hall that has resulted in the construction of this bridge, and then later on, the same policies resulted in the construction of another overpass that tore through the Black community. So those are the main issues that we're trying to bring attention to today. They're going on for 40 years. Mr. Robinson is more well-versed, and Mr. Grimes, they are more well-versed in the issue of the devastation caused by the past. So, I'd like to ask you a specific question about why they've been working on the field for 30, 40 years on this issue. Right? You guys have been working a long time on this issue of this overpass and how it has adversely affected this community, but they get no traction. Nothing, they're not taken seriously.
Why would you say it's important to make sure that you guys are taken seriously about this?
Well, what we want is restoration. Okay? We want the mayor to live up to what he said he was going to do, and that's ask the federal government for $250 million for restoration for the south side and the low-income community. To empower the people once again to restore the hope and the livelihood of our community.
What type of change would you guys say you want to see happen after this?
I would like to see a community that we could be proud of, that people can visit from out of town. We should be making money on this side of town from tourism. That was the purpose initially of historic preservation, to preserve our history so that we could invite people to share it later on in the form of tourism dollars. But we're not benefiting from any tourism dollars over here because of the ordinance. That's one reason. So we'd like to see this area alive again. We'd like to see a trade center, as Mr. Robinson pointed out, at National High School. Mr. Robinson is a businessman. He has experience in these companies that you feel that these young Black people are not being prepared for to work in. So there's a big about Dasher High School and how it's turned into a training school.
What we are hoping is that they can consider taking the old Dasher High School, re-renovating it, and using it for a training center for carpenters, painters, welders, pipe fitters, a center where people can learn to conduct business. And we want an incubator with a revolving loan fund. It's very difficult for small black business to get a loan. They'll start out working from their homes and make their way downtown and get there. When they go to the bank to get the backing that they need, they can't seem to get it because of the point system. Their credit scores are too low. So we want a program where out of the $250 million, they can consider taking $50 million and use for loan guarantees. So if they're turned down by a bank, they can take $250,000 and actually put the cash money into the bank to secure a loan for 18 to 24 months. Something of that nature, something that makes sense. We want this community to be a thriving community once again. Back in the early years, Fitzgerald, the trumpet player,
Fitzgerald, Joe Basie, Louis Armstrong, a lot of those people, the jazz age in America, here, stopped and moved Valdosta to live, and they stayed in the little red house. That house is on the historic register too, but it's not protected. No one even really cares about it. But these artists couldn't stay anywhere else because of Jericho. And now we're in Jericho again in 1980. You know, but back then, that they couldn't stay at those places. And they loved coming to Valdosta.
I would like to add this, I think this is important, is that when Mr. Robinson embarked upon the city and county elected officials, they apparently seemed as if though it wasn't making much sense. But now if you Google the railroad tracks, overpass across this nation, they went straight through the black community, tore them apart economically. So this endeavor is not just here in Valdosta. This is something that's needed across the nation. Not only that, there are monies that's set aside for this purpose. And so we are saying to the leaders in the city to step up to the plate and do what you know is right. Now, everything that we're requesting along the lines of constructing buildings and paving roads and sidewalks, we don't only want that to come into Valdosta, we also want to be a part of the plumbers, the electricians, everybody that bring this into existence. We don't want the mayor, we don't want city council and the city manager to get the same people to do the work that they've always did, and we walk away with nothing. And you can't say I'm wrong, because we just had a high school that was built to the tune of $85 million. And we fought like heaven or hell, and we received none of that money. So we also want inclusion. We don't just want them to do these things, we want inclusion for black folk.
The historic map, the local historic map, I want you to shoot. Where's the map, guys? This map, I want you to see the lines. They're not hiding it. But it's obvious. Look at it. It's wrong. And no one is upset about that. I understand that's clearly segregation. And when people put that on, let it see and label. But I just want you to know that I will show you that. I will show you. We'll get on that.
Yeah. Actually, one more question.
Okay.
So when I spoke with the city earlier, they were saying that some of the examples that you guys were giving doesn't meet Section 106. How do you guys feel about that?
Well, Section 106 was adopted in 1966 by the National Historic Preservation Act. There were 4 components of that act. One was Section 106, which was designed to keep them doing what they did. They were to have gone into consultation, neighborhoods, groups back then to keep the bridge from being constructed. They did none of that. It's a mandate. It was a mandate, it wasn't a law. But they were charged, making can't live in a town with a Jim Crow law on the books, and that's illegal.
And in addition to that, whatever law that was passed, they have always fought it when it came to equal justice for the black man, woman, and their children.
There have never been any equilibrium in this city. This street here is blocked off just within a block from here. Preventing services from these existing buildings down here for businesses in this area. We're talking about the facts of reality and the results of reality. The reality is that our community don't have anything based upon construction this bridge. And all we are asking is that the mayor asks the federal government for assistance to help him with his city to restore the south side and revitalize this area and re-empower the people. We do not want people to come in here and buy up the property and ownership change hands. We want to restore the people that's in this community.
So to make sure I have it correct, you guys don't want the money for y'all's group. You guys want the mayor to come here and restore the area.
Yes, we want them to request the aid for the city because what they're getting these small grants and it's not enough to even put a dent in the problem that we have. We want our children to stop having to kill one another because they don't have anything that they can look forward to. And that's the bottom line.
And we want our children to stop looking at this scene generation to generation now. My grandchildren now are seeing this. It's not good for their psychological self-esteem to see this every day. And these leaders know that, but they're not doing anything to improve it. 40 years of this, and it's crumbling. The buildings are still crumbling. But that Section 106 was designed to keep from happening. They didn't employ Section 106 when they erected the Hill Avenue overpass. That should have been a decision that should have been made for people in the community. And at that time, people in the community could have spoken up as to why it should not have been placed there. We were never given an opportunity on either occasion to object to very historic places. The Hill Avenue, that killed the rest of the black intellectual community. When they erected that overpass, that was where your churches came from. Macedonia, the part of the religious community sprang from that area. They killed that with the overpass. The Phyllis Weekly Reading Club, they just tore down less than 2 years ago. That was part of that history on Hill Avenue. Rare. Do you know that that building is now being used for tourism in places like Columbus? Phyllis Weekly Reading Clubs, that's how important that building was. And it was intact. And they tore it down. Plank by plank. I have pictures on it.
So Section 106 is supposed to state that they're supposed to come talk with the community, right?
They were supposed to consult with the residents who are affected, or who are mainly affected by any decisions that they would make concerning construction, erection of bridges. None of that happened because the National Historic Preservation Act that was passed in 1966 was passed 1 year after the 19 Civil Rights Act. The mood of the country was good. They wanted everything protected. White history, black history, Indian history, in any of these municipalities. They were not supposed to only just protect white history. They were supposed to protect all history. So it got off on the wrong foot, and it was never corrected.
This movement, I want to add, this movement is not just about the three of us. It's about all of us. We encourage the pastors from the religious community, business owners, politicians, common everyday citizens to join not us, but this effort to bring about the revitalization of what John Robinson called the railroad tracks of social divide.
Got you guys. Thank you so much.
Today's press conference will be on Channel 10, and they're leaving now. We just closed out a press conference here in Valdosta, Lowndes County, Georgia, concerning the James Beck overpass, and we are leaving, but I just wanted you all to know that I'm going to post that this evening on Facebook and my YouTube channel, Boston G.B.R. And I want to thank Channel 10 WALB TV for coming out, because too often we are documenting across the state of Georgia that when we call the news stations, the TV stations, the radio, and the television, they don't appear in the black community. But we want to thank the news media outlets that understand that when we are called at the age of 18 to go register to serve in these United States Armed Forces, we serve religiously, and we have a right to be covered under freedom of the press as any other news event in the state of Georgia. And so I just want to say to you that I want to thank the news media. I have covered over half the state of Georgia. I know what I'm talking about. And if you don't believe me, I have so many people across the state of Georgia who would love to tell their stories about how the news media, TV stations, radio, and newspapers do not cover the news in the black community. All you have to do, even in Madison, Florida, with the Madison, Florida 9. In Quitman and Bruce County, it was the Quitman 10+2. In Meigs, Georgia, it was former Mayor Linda Harris. She really have a story to tell. In Camilla, it was Rufus Davis. In Lumpkin, it's Charles Gibson. In Dawson, Georgia, it is Christopher Wright, who was shot 6 times. In Clayton County, and we just can go on across. These people would love for you all to call them TV stations, radio, and newspapers. They would love to tell you what have already been documented on my Boston G.B.R. YouTube channel, and on Facebook, and on www.georgebostonryan.com, as well as on Twitter, Instagram, kvci.blogspot.com. And we didn't start doing this yesterday. We started civil rights work in March of 1975. That's right, I'm getting along. Y'all have a nice day. Tonight, this afternoon, at 4, WALB Channel 10 will air this press conference. The young lady just told me, and I'm just telling you, you want to see what is going on in Valdosta, Georgia, because you can believe it or not, but there's a lot of things going on right before our faces, and many of us don't observe it. Look at these lines in the sky. Most of y'all don't even notice that. Look at it. Look at it. When we were little children, I often say it, we didn't see those clouds or stuff like that in the air. But there's something happening in our world. We don't know whether it's climate change or feeding the clouds or polluting us or trying to save us. But I say to you today, December the 1st, 2022, it is what it is. Bye-bye.